Hi, N.A.R.C.Troopers. Today we're going to talk about how the trauma changes you, because it does. Trauma changes you, absolutely. So after any kind of trauma, from whether it's going to war or a car accident or spending any amount of time with the cluster B disordered individual, which would be your narcissist, your sociopath, your psychopath, people with antisocial personality disorder, people in that cluster is what I know about. So I can't talk about anything else, but I know about that. When you are recovering from a relationship with them, so many times you have to leave, and you do, and other times they discard you. They just suddenly take off the mask one day and, jettison you away. Like, bye-bye, time to go, time for you to go. So the brain and the body react to that. Every cell records memories, and every embedded trauma-related neuropathway has an opportunity to repeatedly reactivate following this trauma. Now, when you're with a narcissist or sociopath or psychopath, they use a form of torture on you. And I don't know if that torture is like, do they know? How do they know how to do that? Is it just instinctual in those people, or is it something else? I don't know what, maybe they read a book on it, or maybe it's just coded into their DNA as a personality disordered person since early childhood. They use this, like, they're great for a while, and then they're monsters, and then they're perfect, and like your ideal whole package. Oh my God, I have struck the jackpot, hit the gold mine. This is it. Oh, holy moly, yes. You think that until they do something awful, and then they do the awful thing, and then they do the good thing, and this goes on, and that's what causes trauma bonding, which is the thing that makes it so hard to get them out of your system after they go. So what do we want to say about that? So one of the most difficult aspects for survivors after you have been with a personality disordered person is to try to understand the changes that are occurring because of that. You have to sort of integrate what they mean, how they affect your life, and then what can be done to ameliorate them, to relieve them, to give yourself some kind of relief from it. So, I think that it's crazy to think that they're just going to go away. We're talking some very deep-rooted physiological, biological, neurobiology things that involve chemicals in your body, and ways that things are just deeply embedded in the body that you're going to have to deal with. So one of the most difficult things for you to, like, a starting point to jump off on is that there's 3 parts to your brain. The reptilian part of your brain, which is the brain stem, and this is the innermost part of the brain. It's responsible for your survival instincts and your autonomic body processes, the ones that just happen instinctively, I guess, is the best way to describe that. Then there's the mammalian, which is the limbic or the midbrain. And this mid-level of the brain is the part that processes emotions and conveys sensory relays. And then the third part of the brain is the neo-mammalian, which is your cortex and your forebrain. This is the most highly evolved part of your brain. And this area of the brain controls your cognitive processing, decision-making, learning, memory, and your inhibitory functions, which everybody needs those. The person with personality disorder does not have that. They don't have the inhibitory part of their brain that's working. There's a lot of part of their brain that is not working. So during trauma, the reptilian brain takes over, the autonomic, reflexive part of your brain that just kicks in: fight, flight, or flee. Fight, flight, or flee. Fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. I get all my F words mixed up. So during this traumatic experience, it sort of shuts down all the non-essential body and mind processes so that it's in survival mode. Make no mistake, your narcissist, sociopath, or psychopath, whichever you're most unfortunate enough to encounter, has these things aren't working on them. They're quite broken. So during this time, the sympathetic nervous system increases stress hormones and prepares the body for that survival response. So in a normal situation, when a threat comes up, the parasympathetic nervous system shifts the body into a more restorative mode. This is when you're not at risk, when you're not threatened, when you are not in that fight, flight, or freeze state. So this process is the one that reduces all of your stress hormones, and it allows your brain to shift back to normal functioning, sort of to say it's okay, you're not in danger, you don't need to release all these chemicals, you don't need to run, you don't need to fight, you don't need to do any of those things because everything's okay, right? So about 20% of trauma survivors will go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or C-PTSD, if it's layers of long-term stuff that's just piled on to each other. So it's kind of an unmitigated experience of anxiety that's related to the trauma, and the shift from the reactive survival responsive mode that happens when the trauma is happening. And instead, the reptilian brain is primed to, it's primed to threat and supported by the dysregulated activity of the significant brain structures. It holds the survivor in a constant reactive state. We've talked about reactive and proactive, that, you know, when you wait for some crap to happen to you and then you react to it, that's the reactive state, right? But you don't want to live in that all the time, because you're that's where you get your hypervigilance and that state of being that is not able to rest or be at peace or to feel calm or any of those things. It can't do that. So your brain becomes dysregulated in the same way, well, not in the same way, but it becomes dysregulated in a similar way as to that of the person with narcissism, sociopathy, or psychopathy. It could be intrusive thoughts. For me, ruminations, looping, obsessive thoughts. What is he doing? Where is he? Who's he with? What's she like? How does it feel to be her? Wow, that's a doozy. How does it feel to be her? What does she think about him? How does he touch her? How does he do stuff with her? Does he do it the same way he did it with me? Still on his knees? You know, like, what is his modus operandi? And I just play those loops of just crazy. Who cares? Who cares? He's been gone a year. Why should I even be thinking about him at all? But it is the dysregulated trauma brain that still, it takes a while. You're not going to recover from this in a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. We're talking, it's going to take a while. So you have these intrusive thoughts. You have unwanted memories. Someone asked me, you know, you always just remember the good stuff. What about all the horrible, criminal, just absolutely unacceptable things that he did? And it's like, yeah, of course I remember those. And I think about them. Of course I think about them. They hurt people. They hurt me. They hurt my family. Of course I think about them, but I think about all of it. And and that's just it. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about it. It just loops and keeps going in a recursive kind of way. There's mood alterations, going from everything from shame to blame to just kind of a negativity and hopelessness, where you feel like nothing is ever going to be right again. I'm not going to feel that way with anyone else. I'm not going to find anyone else who makes me so absolutely miserable and want to die. And at the same time, the next 5 minutes later, it makes me feel such bliss and perfect paradise. My gosh, it's the highest of highs. It's the lowest of lows. So what does your brain do with that? It's got to be confused, right? So all of that, the sensory and emotional trauma related material, you do what you can to try to avoid that when you're in recovery. So you're going to have maybe panic attacks. You could be in a rage 1 minute, ready to hire somebody to go do something to your person. You may the next minute be curled up in a fetal position, crying until you can't breathe. You may have panic attacks where you have the heart pounding so hard you can't get your breath, and you feel like you're gonna die, and you can't get a grip on yourself without maybe popping a benzo or something like that, because it's totally beyond your control. That's like telling a heroin addict, just get over it. You know, you don't need to go through withdrawal. Just get over it. They can't. So why would you say that to a trauma victim, to a person who is going through trauma because of these relationships? It's the same thing. They can't just snap out of it. So that's something you need to know. During this time period, your amygdala, which is a very important part of your brain, and it's also part of the brain that doesn't function at all, worth a crap on a narcissist. Their amygdala is broken. It doesn't work. So when you're going through trauma, this almond-shaped mass that's deep inside your brain, it sort of deals with all the survival threat identification, plus it tags memories, just like on Facebook or something, and puts emotions with them. Like, this was a sad moment, this was a happy moment, this was a moment of ecstasy. So after trauma, this amygdala can get caught up in this highly alert, looping function where it sees threat everywhere. It sees threat everywhere. So at the same time you have an overactive amygdala, your hippocampus is underactive, is a result of trauma. So an increase in your stress hormone kills the cells in the hippocampus. Yes, this person, this narcissist, this sociopath, this psychopath has actually murdered your brain, not just your soul. Yes, they're soul rapists. They haven't just murdered your heart, they've murdered your brain. And with this death of the cells in the hippocampus, it's less effective in making synaptic connections that are necessary for things like cataloging memories or being able to think clearly and to process things, to say the threat is past, you're safe now, everything's okay, yeah, everything's fine. You can't do that when your hippocampus is dying. You also have something called ineffective variability, which is sort of a constant elevation of your stress hormones that interfere with the body's ability to regulate itself. You have, your serotonin, your dopamine, your oxytocin. Have y'all ever heard of peptide addiction? Look that one up, and let's spend a few days or weeks studying peptide addiction. It's real, so real. Scientific fact that that's something going on with you, peptide addiction. So the sympathetic nervous system remains highly activated during this time, leading to complete exhaustion of the body and the mind and everything, and the collapsing of all of your different bodily systems, including your adrenal system, which you need to be healthy. That's why you hear about so many people who go through some horrible traumatic experience with a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath, and they end up with something like an autoimmune disease or cancer, which comes from, I've always believed that cancer and heart disease trigger inflammation, and inflammation triggers these cells to do stupid things that attack you and ultimately give you the cancer or the heart trouble or whatever. That's how that works. So when all of this stuff gets screwed up, you become physically ill. A lot of people have like fibromyalgia following trauma. Have you heard that? That's very common to develop something like that. It's not enough that you went through all of this craziness with them and lived in that rabbit hole. Once they're gone, they continue to torture you. Your brain continues to die. Your body systems continue to fail, and you are overcome with stress to the point where you cannot be healthy or be okay. So healing is not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody's going to have to find different things that work for them because everybody's experience is different. Everybody's narcissist could be different. I mean, some of them rant and rage, like the lesser narcissists. Some of them that are the mid-range are very sneaky and covert, and they never raise their voice. My ex-husband never raised his voice to me. He never yelled or screamed or actually showed any emotion of fear or intimacy or anything in the whole 16 years we were together, which was a definite sign, what's wrong with this person? Why are they never afraid? Why is intimacy kind of weird? And why do they not have human emotions like a human being? That's a story for another day. But they're going to also have, these things with them are permanent. Let's just frame it that way. And with us, they're temporary. They're not going to last forever. Well, I guess they could if you don't learn to manage them. They could last forever, but that's not something that anybody wants, right? So what you want to do is do things to calm the parasympathetic nervous system so that you can relax, so that you can feel a sense of calm and peace and like everything's gonna be okay. You can't get to that place without doing, just a whole lot of work. So let's just know that psychological trauma, emotional trauma, what you have experienced with your narcissist, whether it's the raging kind or the sneaky little passive-aggressive kinds that never raise their voice, and they're always such a little sweetheart, but they are, oh my gosh, they will slowly kill you, destroy your life, and then leave you by the side of the road for dead after they've bludgeoned you and stabbed you and kicked you to the curb. They are that person, whether you know it or not. And so psychological trauma is a severe consequence of having relations with the narcissistic personality disordered person, whether it's your partner or it could be a parent. Heck, there could even be bosses that you work for who could have this, right? But whatever they are, you're going to go through the full gambit of emotions from, insomnia to nightmares. My dreams were messed up. Couldn't take melatonin to go to sleep because my dreams were already horrific. If I had taken that, I think it would have just pushed me over the edge. So you have to do everything you can do, because so many times when people can't deal with their trauma, they end up trying to numb it with substances, alcohol, drug use. They practice avoidance, withdrawal, dissociation, depression, suicidal ideation. All kinds of really negative consequences come from this, not to mention the part about it kills your brain and your soul and your heart, and it's like you're completely annihilated. Like they had the button, the button, right? The button, the red one that, you push and it's like, everything's just blown to smithereens. It's like that. Yeah. So don't discount it or minimize it or try to think like, wow, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Well, maybe there is. And that's why you stayed. And that's another topic for another day. But regardless of that, it's not your fault that you have trauma. It is your responsibility to heal. I've seen too many people stuck for a really long time. And I've seen other people, 2 of them, didn't make it. Since this happened to me 12 months ago, there have been 2 people that were in support groups or in, trying to get help who just didn't make it. They're no longer with us. So this is serious, guys. And please don't minimize it or have family or friends or even therapists who are well-meaning but uninformed. Do not have anyone tell you that going through trauma that follows narcissistic abuse or any abuse from any of those people in cluster B, don't let anyone tell you that this is not a life-threatening experience that alters your body and your brain. And if they don't know that, then you don't need to talk to them and turn to them for help because they can't help you. You need to find someone who can. I have different programs online that I love, that I would love to endorse, but I'm not going to because I think everybody just Google, narcissistic abuse recovery podcast, narcissistic abuse recovery YouTube videos, narcissistic abuse recovery anything, and you're going to find a wealth of information online. I do have a website, N.A.R.C.Troopers, but there are people who know more than I do or who specialize in different types of treatment, different types of healing modalities that might be more appropriate than anything. My site is half education and half tools to help you heal, but they may not be the right tools for you. Do your own due diligence. Look for yourself. Search until you find something that helps you. Search until you find a program or find whatever it is, something that's going to help you get your body and your brain back. Because what is life without a body or a brain, right? I know what it feels like, and I am really fighting like a champion to get mine back. So these people are sick, disordered, dysregulated, maladaptive, not okay. People, they're dangerous, they're criminal, they're not safe to be around. They will destroy you. They will annihilate you. They will erase you. Don't let that happen. Get out, get safe, and get better. That's my message for today. All right, guys, ta-ta. Don't get COVID and don't get out there before it's safe to do that, okay? Stay safe. All right, bye-bye.